Hey everyone, I would like to talk about the paranormal. In my lifetime, I have seen a paper airplane all of a sudden go parallel to the ground, fly for about 2 seconds on its own. I was just a young lad in my living room, laying down, completely laying down, and I threw the airplane straight up into the air. And that airplane went straight up and then immediately went vertical horizontal to the ground, to the floor, and floated. And then just... I've told that story a couple times, and the folks that I've told it to said to me, and with a smirk on their face, yeah, we think what we see, but it's really not what we see. In so many words or less, they tried to tell me that what I saw, and they tried to convince me that I didn't see that. Isn't that funny? Another time in this same house, I was watching TV in the basement along with my mother and father and my brother. Everyone in the household is in the basement. I was really, really young. This was not a dream. We all heard footsteps right above us. And the floor was... This was an old house. Very old house. Built way before we lived there. Long time. Like this house was built in the 50s. So you could hear the boards creaking. My father immediately ran upstairs to check to see what was going on. And I remember his face. My father's face was like this. What? He immediately ran upstairs, looked around. Nothing was there. And then this was like 4 footsteps, like loud footsteps. Another time, I was in the washroom or facility room or restroom or the place where sometimes you may do your business, And that's enough. I'm going to talk about that. But the point is I was in there all by myself, of course. But the water faucet, where you wash your hands, when you get done, the sink, and the faucet right in the center, just one single faucet, 2 knobs, both in the off position when I first sat down. All of a sudden, the water turned on by itself, full blast. I told my mother about it. She didn't want to hear about it. She must have been just too busy, too much going on. Or I was probably getting on her nerves because at that age I was a handful, I will admit. My mother just didn't want to hear it at the time, which is fine. We're all not in the mood to hear things. And I wasn't upset that she didn't want to hear it. She just brushed it off as me just messing around playing games. But I was probably a little bit out of control. I was a little bit hyper as a young lad. Who cares? I don't regret my mother not wanting to hear about it. She just because, that's preposterous. How does a water faucet just turn on all by itself at full blast? But I remember it. It's clear as day. Doors would slam shut all by themselves, or that could have just been the wind. That was the garage door. It was completely wide open. The main big garage door was closed, and then you got the side door which enters into the house. We all have that. We have attached garages. There was a 1-car attached garage. The main door, big door, was closed. The door to the side that enters into the house was completely wide open all the way. But this thing slammed shut. Bam! Dang. Spirits beyond this plane of our existence, I do believe, walk the earth. In purgatory, if that's what you'd like to call it, and they just don't believe that they have passed on and they just continue to live their lives. Or check this out, possibly the actual wood, the actual fibers of the wood itself that the house was constructed with, records things, much like records things, voices, sounds. But how do you record footsteps? Now, don't get me wrong, for those that don't know what I'm talking about. Sometimes, and I've heard about this, I'm not the only one to say this. The wood in a house can record, like a tape recorder is, basically. And then sometimes repeats that if a sweet spot is hit. The older the building, the more possibility and I mean, it's just what I've heard. That actual wood fibers can record sound and things, and maybe actually even like visual too. Illusions. But that's up for debate. But that could be just like a convenient excuse to try to explain away things. But maybe it's been proven by science. What about them voice boxes that we hear when you see on TV when there's like a voice box? I've never owned one of those. Those are cool, where they can talk to the spirits of the other realms, of the other dimensions that have passed on from this realm and dimension. Our third dimension in a fourth dimensional space. Our third dimension lives in a fourth dimensional space. Yeah, I've seen teleportations at work. My place of employment was haunted, also built in the 50s, because I remember I was taking a smoke break outside back in the day. I worked there probably a long time ago. I'm not going to say when. And it shows the date of the building when it was built. I just happened to notice the placard right there stamped into the building. There's this number, and it was like 1953. This building was haunted. I had seen, I was in the stockroom, and the only other entrance out was the fire escape exit, which of course nobody uses unless for emergencies. And I immediately walked into the stockroom because I was the stock guy. I maintained where the merchandise is for all the customers, and then I helped them bring it to their cars when they needed it, like TVs, refrigerators, washers and dryers, you name it. It was an appliance store. And I saw the physical apparition or spirit run down the floor of the stockroom in between the TVs and the dishwashers, where I had them stacked neatly in a row, but there's an aisle in between them. And I said, "Hey, what's up, Brent?" Because this apparition looked exactly like Brent, and it skipped and went hee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. Because this was the personality of Brent. He worked in the appliance department. He was a manager, and he was kind of goofy. He was only like 5 foot tall, weighed like 100 pounds. Small guy who could fit in small places, and that's just the way it is. You got the big tall guy like me, the giant 6'5", 269 pounds. Then you got the small guy who can fit in the small places. You need them both, because the big guy, if his life depends on it, he can't switch into that little small place. Like if there's like an apocalypse. And the small guy is going to need the big guy to reach up in the high places and lift and strong. So they're a team. There's many times where Brent had to squeeze into small places in this place of work because the boss told us to go maintain and do things and build things, and we constructed and we tore things down. We tore down gondolas. We built things in the store, and together we were a team. Well, I saw his apparition, but then I looked. Now I'm getting back to the point of the story. This was not Brent that I saw, because immediately I turned around and looked, and I saw Brent helping a customer in his department, where obviously he should be, not in the stockroom skipping and saying la-di-di-di-di-da. Skipping. So this was obviously not him. It must have been a ghost of a child. Okay. A very friendly ghost. This ghost would play games. This ghost would teleport things. This ghost would turn on the towel dispenser with the battery operated towel dispenser when nobody was there. In the break room, it would just move, but it would just dispense towels, and you got to rip it off. And then and if you don't do that, you can do it again and get yourself another extra bit of towel added onto the one you just dispensed, and then it'll dispense a little bit more. That's awesome. That's smart because it conserves paper. And then you rip it off and you use it. Well, this thing would just stop, dispense again, and then I would say, stop it, please. Like I was letting whatever entity know that I was there, and I just would like it to stop, and it listened to me. This entity would listen to me. This entity also would teleport objects, like I said. We were one day playing with a soccer ball inside the stockroom that one of the other stock guys that I work with had brought with him. And in our off time, we would kick the soccer ball around in the stockroom. And this stockroom also had high rafters that went up. And it had the angle iron and all the metal. This was like 20 feet up into the air. This was like raw construction. It's a warehouse stockroom. And you can kick the soccer ball way up into the air and it'll arc. And this stockroom is huge. This is one of the biggest stockrooms in the entire company of all the stores in the chain that owned, where I worked at. It was the biggest one in the whole company. So what else are you going to do when you're off time, when you're waiting, ready to go home, and you got like a half hour left, and you're just chilling. And the boss didn't care. The boss thought it was as long as we didn't do it in the main floor of the store where the customers was. Well, anyway, this ball got stuck in the rafters, kicked, stuck. No worries, we got a 16-foot ladder in this stockroom. So we get the ladder, 16-foot ladder, and my coworker, what was his first name? Because we called him by his last name because his last name was so cool. We'll just call him Joe. Because that's not his first name, but I don't want to say his last name because that's what we called him. But I don't, when you call somebody, but you don't remember their first name because you always call them by their last name because some people have this last name that's just cool to say. So Joe climbed the ladder. And like I said, this was like 24 foot high, really tall building of a warehouse built in the 50s. They didn't mess around. This thing was huge. Of course, you're going to make an appliance store out of that. Before that, it was owned by a different appliance company who was also a furniture appliance store. So yeah, 24 foot high. He wasn't tall enough to reach the soccer ball, even with this 16-foot ladder and including the length of his body. And he was like all the way up on the third or second rung. You don't want to go too high up on the ladder. He was brave, but he's not stupid, and he's athletic. So he was the guy to do it, not me. He weighed less than me, obviously. I think at the time I was like 300 plus pounds. I weighed too much for the ladder, especially at that height. And being with the center of gravity would have been too dangerous for a guy like me to go up there. So Joe walks up there, and he's the appropriate weight for the ladder. And he's not unable to reach the soccer ball. So I hand him one of those long saran wrap rolls that stock guys use to wrap merchandise with. It's just a big roll of saran wrap. You can wrap whatever you want. You can wrap a display model that's a washer or a dryer or even a refrigerator, just enough so where it's not going to scratch it when you put it in the customer's vehicle. So I handed him one that was almost completely dispensed, so it didn't weigh that much. I handed him, and this thing is approximately, I'd say, 3 feet. No, not even that long. It's about 2.5 feet. So I handed it to him, and I said, "Here you go, Joe." Handed it, and it still wasn't enough. So he's gonna try to throw it at the soccer ball to try to dislodge it. He's only got about 4 more feet. So he takes his time, throws it. It nails the soccer ball. Perfect. The soccer ball comes and falls down and hits the floor in the stockroom. Fine, that's good. But then this saran wrap roll had teleported right back into his hand, into the position where he was almost ready, like he threw it like that, and then it was like right immediately back into his hand like he hadn't thrown it. Like it teleported but this happened instantaneously. As soon as it hit the soccer ball, the roll of saran wrap was back into his hand, and he whipped it. He, and then, and I said, Joe, it's right immediately back in your hand. It teleported back into your hand. I said, Joe, it teleported back into your hand. He freaked out, turned white as a sheet, and ran out of the stockroom. He couldn't believe it either. He was freaked out. This video has been long enough. I've experienced many paranormal things in my life. What have you experienced? Thanks for watching. Hit the like button.